Time is 8:13. You're currently on the arrest for 2 dwelling burglary.
Somewhere on a hard drive in Los Angeles, there is a scene nobody will ever see. Police raiding Neverland Ranch in December of 1993, with a 35-year-old Michael Jackson being strip searched by detectives looking for evidence, a sequence shot like a thriller, and framed to make him look like the victim.
The media has dissected and manipulated these allegations to reach their own conclusions. I have been forced to submit to a dehumanizing and humiliating examination by the Santa Barbara County Sheriff.
The director told The New Yorker he watched the playback and saw a man treated like an animal, a monster. The people who own that footage, the same people who own his name, his music, his face, they just paid up to $50 million to make sure you never watch it.
It was the most humiliating ordeal of my life.
The film originally framed the 1993 case, the case that began Michael's long decline, as an extortion plot that cast him as the victim. The estate paid one of the biggest reshoot bills in modern Hollywood history to make sure none of that ended up in the final cut. The contract that forced them to do it was signed 31 years earlier by lawyers who are now mostly dead. The Jackson estate, meaning longtime family attorney John Branca and music executive John McClane, co-produced, and the estate had final say on the script. The script Logan wrote was a defender's dream. According to reporting from Puck News, Variety, The New York Times, and The New Yorker, the original Michael opened in 1993 with police lights flashing as Jackson, played by his real-life nephew Jaafar Jackson, stared into a mirror at Neverland Ranch while officers arrived at his house. The film then flashed back through his childhood, his rise, and his career, building all the way back up to that opening moment. The third act played out the case in detail. The strip search recreation Fuqua described to The New Yorker, a full action sequence of the Los Angeles Police Department raid on Neverland. Audio recreations of secret recordings made of Evan Chandler, the father of the 13-year-old accuser Jordan Chandler, threatening to destroy Michael.
This man is going to be humiliated beyond belief. He will not believe it. He will not believe what's going to happen. It's beyond his worst nightmares. So one more record. If I go through with this, I win big time. I will get everything I want. There will be stories.
An entire subplot about how the Chandler family allegedly cycled through attorneys looking for the biggest payout. Derek Luke played Johnny Cochran defending Michael in court. Kat Graham filmed scenes as Diana Ross. The whole film was 3.5 hours long, with an original ending that was dark and somber, telling the story of a man brought down by lies. That was the version Fuqua finished, and that was the version he submitted as his director's cut.
And so I was like, I want to see the socks. I want to see the hat. I want to get in there with Michael. I want to see that sequence from behind with all those lights sparkling. Because, that's Michael. That's the entertainment of it all.
Then, post-production fell apart. In September 2024, the Financial Times dropped an investigative story that had nothing to do with the movie. The piece revealed that the Jackson estate had quietly paid roughly $16 million in confidential settlements in 2019 and 2020 to a group of accusers nobody had heard about publicly, with the names redacted. The story barely registered outside industry circles, but it set off something inside the estate's law firm.
And then they realized, so in 2024, there was some Financial Times reporting around some settlements that Lionsgate had not known about before, and that caused them to go back and take a second look at settlements in the past. And
estate lawyers started auditing every Michael Jackson legal document going back decades, going through old settlements, NDAs, and depositions to see what else might still be sitting in a filing cabinet somewhere. And during that audit, they found, in the original 1994 Chandler civil settlement, a clause they had apparently overlooked. The clause forbade any cinematic dramatization of Jordan Chandler or the events surrounding his allegations by either side, with no expiration date built in. Larry Feldman, the lawyer who negotiated that 1994 settlement on behalf of the Chandlers, confirmed it on the record to the New York Times. He said both sides agreed they couldn't publicize or communicate what occurred except inside police investigations and sworn testimony. When a Times reporter described what Fuqua had filmed, Feldman's response was 4 words. That's exactly what they couldn't do. The 1994 settlement was originally drafted to protect Michael, paying the Chandler family roughly $23 million and binding them to silence. The whole point was to make the allegations go away, but settlements are bilateral. Both sides agree to the terms, and whatever silenced the Chandlers also silenced the Jackson camp. The contract that was supposed to protect Michael Jackson ended up being the very thing that buried his own story. Howard Weitzman wrote it alongside Johnny Cochran and Larry Feldman. Weitzman died in 2021, Cochran in 2005. Feldman is the only one still alive. The estate's current attorneys hadn't reread it. That's the part that broke the movie. In November 2024, Lionsgate quietly pushed the release from April to October. 2 months later, Matt Belloni at Puck News broke the actual reason. Around the same time, the Palisades fire damaged screenwriter John Logan's house, slowing the rewrites further. By June of 2025, the cast was reassembling in Los Angeles for 22 days of reshoots and a whole new third act. The new ending shows Jackson preparing to step on stage during his 1987 Bad Tour, triumphant before any allegation had ever surfaced. The film cuts off in 1988 as if the rest of his life never happened.
It's a lot, man. I mean, it is a lot, there's the whole Neverland of it all and all that. Is the Super Bowl, right? Remember that moment, iconic stuff,
The numbers depend on who you ask. Variety put reshoots at 10 to 15 million, while Puck pegged the all-in figure, including lost tax incentives, idle crew, and bonus payments to Fuqua and King at closer to 50 million. Bloomberg, in late April 2026, didn't put a total on it, but confirmed Fuqua and King received millions of additional dollars for the rebuild. The estate paid the bill, and as compensation for footing it, they got an expanded equity stake in the finished film. So the people who missed the clause, then paid to fix the clause, now make more money on the film that no longer contains the material they originally wanted in. The 1994 settlement at the center of all this came out of a case that started a year earlier in the summer of 1993. In August of 1993, Jordan Chandler told a psychiatrist named Mathis Abrams that Michael Jackson had behaved inappropriately with him. Evan Chandler, a Beverly Hills dentist with screenwriting ambitions, had been pushing Jackson for a payout for months before the allegation went public. There are recordings of Evan, made secretly by Jordan's stepfather, in which he says he is going to destroy Michael if he doesn't get what he wants. Those tapes are real and sit in the public record, and the Jackson defense ecosystem has been pointing at them for 30 years. But there is also this. Before the warrant was ever issued, Jordan had given investigators a detailed description of unique markings on Jackson's body, including skin discoloration only someone who had seen Jackson naked would recognize. The prosecution kept it sealed, planning to use it as a trap. If Jackson's body matched, the case was over. On December 22nd, 1993, detectives arrived at Neverland Ranch with a court order to photograph him for comparison.
I am not guilty of these allegations, but if I am guilty of anything, it is of giving all that I have to give to help children all over the world.
Both sides claimed the photos vindicated their position. The defense said the description didn't match. The prosecution said it did. The images themselves were never released, and the lead Santa Barbara prosecutor and Jackson's lawyer are both now dead. Whatever they saw went with them. 2 grand juries, one in Los Angeles and one in Santa Barbara, heard the evidence in early 1994, neither indicted. By September of that year, prosecutors Tom Sneddon and Gil Garcetti said no charges would be filed because Jordan didn't want to testify. 3 months earlier, on January 25th, 1994, the civil case had settled for roughly $23 million. $15 million in trust for Jordan, $1.5 million each for his parents, and $5 million for the lawyers. The settlement explicitly did not bar Jordan from cooperating with the criminal case. He simply chose not to. A separate, smaller settlement of about $2 million was reached the same year with the family of Jason Francia, the son of a former Neverland maid. Jason had told police Jackson had not behaved inappropriately with him, and his family never filed a lawsuit. The money was paid anyway. Defenders read that timeline as an extortion getting paid off and going away. Critics read the same timeline as money buying silence in a case the prosecution couldn't win without the witness. Same facts, 2 contradictory stories. And every chapter that comes next, every documentary, every lawsuit, every settlement, every reshoot, every Broadway show that ends in 1988 runs on top of that one unresolved ambiguity. The Chandler case officially closed in September of 1994. For the next 11 years, the question of what happened in 1993 sat dormant in the public conversation. Then a British documentary crew showed up at Neverland. Martin Bashir's Living with Michael Jackson, which aired in February of 2003.
But Michael has claimed that what TV journalist Martin Bashir presented was a twisted and edited construction of scandal and innuendo.
This showed Jackson holding hands with a 13-year-old cancer survivor named Gavin Arvizo, defending sleepovers with kids and saying he saw nothing wrong with sharing his bed.
And I have to say to you, and I didn't know you before, and you haven't put on a front. Your relationship with your children is spectacular. And in fact, it almost makes me weep when I see you with them.
The whole thing detonated, and the Santa Barbara DA opened an investigation. By the end of 2003, Jackson was charged with 10 counts, including the most serious allegations involving a minor, administering alcohol to a minor, and conspiracy to commit child abduction. The conspiracy charge alone alleged that Michael's team had tried to keep the Arvizo family at Neverland against their will to film a rebuttal video. The trial ran 14 weeks with 140 witnesses. Defense attorney Tom Mesereau attacked the credibility of Gavin's mother, Janet Arvizo, who had a documented history of welfare fraud and a separate JCPenney lawsuit that several jurors found troubling. Jackson arrived at court late in pajama pants after a hospital trip for back pain. The image went around the world. Macaulay Culkin testified for the defense. So did Chris Tucker, so did Jay Leno, and so did Wade Robson.
Count 1, verdict. We, the jury in the above entitled case, find the defendant not guilty of conspiracy as charged in count 1 of the indictment.
On June 13, 2005, the jury came back not guilty on every count. Foreman Paul Rodriguez told reporters they didn't believe Janet Arvizo, and the case fell apart on credibility. In 2017, 4 jurors from that case were interviewed for a true crime series called The Jury Speaks, and every one of them said they would still vote to acquit. Jackson was tried in criminal court with the highest possible burden of proof and cleared on every charge. After 10 counts, 140 witnesses, and 14 weeks of testimony from a prosecution that had spent more than a decade building its case, the most investigated man in American celebrity history walked out of that courtroom cleared on every single charge. And then there's Wade Robson. At 22 years old, he took the stand in 2005 and testified under oath that Michael Jackson had never touched him. 8 years later, he filed a $1.5 billion lawsuit against Jackson's estate, alleging 7 years of misconduct, beginning when he was 7 years old. He filed his civil case in May of 2013, citing 2 nervous breakdowns and the birth of his son as the trigger for what he described as recovered memories. Robson didn't just defend Michael in 2005. After Michael died, he gave eulogies, pitched the estate for choreography work, and sent letters asking to be hired for MJ1. The lawsuit came only after the estate said no. James Safechuck had defended Jackson under oath in 1993 and to friends, family, and prosecutors for over 20 years after that. He filed his own lawsuit in 2014, saying he realized what had happened to him only after seeing Robson on the Today Show. The estate's defense was simple. These men had defended Jackson under oath for decades, so they were either lying then or they're lying now. Both lawsuits got dismissed multiple times on statute of limitations. Jackson's personal estate was dismissed as a defendant in 2015. The remaining live defendants are MJJ Productions and MJJ Ventures. The argument is simple. Those companies had a legal duty to protect children in their care, and they didn't. In January 2019, 4 hours of footage detonated at the Sundance Film Festival.
This, for me, was never a film about Michael Jackson, and I don't really know that much about Michael Jackson. This is a film about Wade Robson and James Safechuck.
Leaving Neverland, a 4-hour, 2-part documentary directed by British filmmaker Dan Reed, featured Robson and Safechuck describing their allegations in graphic, granular detail, including mock weddings with rings and Jackson allegedly telling them, "If anyone finds out, we both go to jail." HBO aired it in March of 2019, and it won the Primetime Emmy that year for Outstanding Documentary. The defenders pushed back hard. British biographer Mike Smallcombe pulled a Santa Barbara County construction permit showing that the Neverland train station, where Safechuck said the misconduct stopped in 1992, wasn't approved for construction until September of 1993. It didn't exist when he said the events happened. Reed conceded the date issue on Twitter, then clarified that Safechuck visited Neverland after 1993 too. A separate contradiction came from Robson, who said the event started during a February 1990 Grand Canyon trip when he was alone with Jackson, while his mother had testified under oath in 1993 that the entire family went on that trip. Both discrepancies are real, both have answers from the accuser's side, and neither has been definitively resolved. The film hit during the height of the Me Too era.
And I think clearly it feeds into the whole Me Too movement
Streamers reassessed, radio stations briefly pulled songs, and YouGov polling jumped from 41% of Americans calling Jackson likely guilty to 48%. The headlines didn't capture what the data actually showed, though. Spotify streams of Jackson's catalog went up in the months after the documentary aired. Radio play normalized within weeks. The MJ musical opened on Broadway in 2022 and has now grossed over $300 million. The estate sold half its publishing catalog to Sony for at least $600 million in 2024. The Jackson estate sued HBO for $100 million in February 2019, citing a non-disparagement clause from a 1992 Dangerous Tour broadcast contract, buried in a 30-year-old document just like the Chandler clause. The case went to arbitration. The Ninth Circuit upheld the order to arbitrate in December of 2020, and the parties eventually settled. The terms are confidential, but the result is observable. As of 2026, Leaving Neverland has been removed from HBO Max in the United States entirely. You can't stream it on any major US platform, you can't rent it. The 4-hour Emmy winner doesn't legally exist in the United States. Reed has said the license reverts to him in 2029, at which point he intends to find the film a new home. So Dan Reed, the director, made a sequel, Leaving Neverland 2, Surviving Michael Jackson, 50 minutes long, released March 18th, 2025. He told Variety he put it on YouTube through a channel called Real Stories, because that was the only way to ensure free, frictionless access. HBO was not involved, and the estate declined to participate.
A day or so, he's telling me that we were brought together by God, that we were meant to be together, that he wanted to be my friend. We can't change what happened to us. It happened, it's done. But what can we do with it now? How can we provide comfort for other survivors? How can we provide education to move towards prevention? That's what this is about.
By the afternoon of release, the YouTube version had 38,000 views. Whereas the first film had won an Emmy and shifted polling 7 points, this one landed with a thud. IMDb fan reviews, organized by pro-Jackson communities, drove the rating to 4.5 out of 10. Slate's critic wrote that the sequel was greeted with virtual silence. The estate had spent 6 years suing, settling, and waiting the story out, and it had worked. Then, in September 2024, the Financial Times ran the piece. $16 million in secret settlements paid to accusers no one had named. 18 months later, the names became public. In February 2026, 4 siblings of the Cascio family, Aldo, Eddie, Dominic, and Marie Nicole, filed a federal lawsuit in Los Angeles. The Cassios had been Jackson's most loyal defenders for 40 years. Their father, Dominic, met Jackson at the Helmsley Palace Hotel in 1984. The family appeared on Oprah in 2010, about a year after Michael's death, defending him. When Oprah asked all 3 siblings present whether there had ever been any improprieties, every one of them said no.
So I have to ask you, Frank, Marie, Nicole, were there ever any improprieties with you and Michael Jackson?
Never. Michael couldn't harm a fly. I mean,
Frank Cassio, the older brother, wrote a 2011 memoir titled My Friend Michael, in which he insisted across multiple chapters that Jackson had never done anything inappropriate to him or his siblings. Now, 4 of them allege years of misconduct beginning at as young as 7. The same family, in some cases the same individuals, who had defended him on national television for 2 decades. Their lawsuit says they were deprogrammed, Eddie's word, after watching Leaving Neverland in 2019.
Casillos say they were coerced into signing an agreement they didn't understand by people who exploited their trauma. The Casillos claim that watching Wade and James describe their experiences finally made them talk to each other and discover they'd all been abused.
The suit also alleges legal manipulation. The siblings say that in 2019 and 2020, when they first approached the estate with their claims, they were represented by attorneys, including the late Howard Weitzman, who they were told represented their interests, but who, in fact, were working for the estate. Their lawyer, Mark Garagos, has said the original 2020 settlement was unlawful and that the siblings felt coerced into signing it. That representation, they say, produced the secret settlements the Financial Times eventually exposed. The estate's lead attorney, Marty Singer, called the suit a desperate money grab. Frank Cassio, the only sibling who didn't join the federal case, is in separate arbitration with the estate, accused of trying to extort $213 million in 2024 by threatening to go public paperwork with allegations. The judge has already indicated that the 2020 settlement they signed will likely block them from publicly pursuing the new lawsuit at all. Another contract, another clause, another piece of paper deciding what stays in public view and what gets buried. By February 2026, all three of Michael Jackson's own children, Prince Paris and Biggie, had filed jointly in Los Angeles County Superior Court demanding the estate's 2025 financial accounting by September 15th. Paris had filed earlier in mid-2025 questioning legal fees, and the court rejected most of her claims in November 2025. She kept going. Prince, who had been a daily presence on the Michael set as an executive producer and who had publicly attended his father's annual birthday celebrations in Vegas, joined his sisters this year. Paris has called the Michael script sugar-coated and dishonest. She refused to be involved in the film. The fans, the accusers, the defenders, the children. Every group with skin in this game has fractured. The only constant in the whole architecture is the paperwork, and even that has just blown a $50 million hole in itself. The film, meanwhile, opened on April 24th, 2026, the same day the Casio interview ran in the Times. Michael earned $39.5 million on opening day, the biggest opening day for a biographical film ever, and by the end of April, it had grossed $430 million worldwide. Critics gave it 39% on Rotten Tomatoes, with Slate accusing the film of gaslighting and The Wrap calling it feature-length publicity that plays like damage control. Dan Reed told Variety the film pushes a false narrative around a man who's a pedophile. The audience didn't care. They showed up anyway, $430 million worth of them. And here is what is strange about all of it. Most of the people who actually shaped this story aren't around anymore. Michael himself died in 2009. Johnny Cochran, the lawyer who defended him through the 1993 case, died that same year. Howard Weitzman, the lawyer who actually drafted the Chandler settlement, died in 2021. Evan Chandler, the father who started everything, died in 2009 too. Almost every signature on the paperwork that runs the Jackson legacy belongs to someone who has been dead for over a decade. And yet, the contracts those people wrote in 1992 and 1994 and 2020 are still the documents deciding what gets made, what gets deleted, and what billion-dollar deal gets approved next. The Sony deal valued his catalog at $1.25 billion.
Sony has reached a blockbuster deal with the estate of Michael Jackson. According to Billboard, Sony's buying half of the late superstar's music catalog.
The Broadway show has grossed $300 million. The biopic has grossed $430. The estate as a whole sits at $2 billion. Every one of those numbers is real, and every one of them is bigger than what the man earned in his lifetime. Sony already had distribution rights to most of the music. What changed hands in 2024 was control over what gets said about who made it. The Robson and Safechuck civil trial is currently scheduled for August 17, 2026, with the plaintiffs seeking roughly $400 million between them. The Casio federal case is just getting started and may not survive its own settlement clauses. Dan Reed has told Variety he expects to be in the courtroom with cameras for what he hopes becomes Leaving Neverland 3. The biopic keeps running in theaters, the kids keep fighting the executors, and licensing checks keep clearing. Every machine in the system still running. Whatever happens in the Santa Monica courtroom on August 17th on either side of the verdict won't change what's already locked into the paperwork. The deleted scenes don't come back. Leaving Neverland isn't returning to American streaming until at least 2029 by Reed's own estimate. Neither the 1994 clause nor the 1992 non-disparagement language has any public expiration date, and the footage Antoine Fuqua filmed of the strip search recreation will sit on a hard drive for the rest of your life. You will see Jaafar Jackson stepping toward the stage on the Bad Tour, triumphant, in 1988, before any of it happened. Wade Robson's trial starts August 17th. That hard drive isn't going anywhere.